All right, let's just jump straight into it. We're going to talk about a method today that claims to crack the code on what is, for so many people, the most frustrating part of English, the verbs. Yeah, we're talking about a system that promises to bring some real simplicity to all that confusion.
So, let me ask you this. Have you ever just felt like English grammar is, I don't know, needlessly complicated? Like it's just a giant mess of rules and exceptions? If you've ever found yourself completely tangled up in tenses, trust me, you are not alone. But what if I told you all that complexity, it's just an illusion?
And that right there, that's what we can call the English grammar paradox. It feels so complex, right? But when you really take a closer look, it doesn't actually behave like other hard languages.
I mean, think about it for a second. You've got these really verb-heavy languages like Russian or German, tons of different endings you have to memorize for every single verb. Then you have tonal languages like Mandarin, where the slightest little shift in your voice can change the entire meaning of a word. English? Well, it doesn't really do either of those things, does it? So, what's its deal?
And this is the big reveal, the core idea behind this whole method. English isn't complex, it's structured. See, it's not about memorizing an endless list of rules. It's about understanding a surprisingly simple and consistent system. The reason it feels so complicated is because we've been taught to look at it all wrong.
And this leads to a really fascinating conclusion. There's a pattern, a whole system that's been hiding in plain sight this whole time. And you know what? Traditional teaching methods, they often completely miss it because they're so focused on the wrong things.
You see, English wasn't always like this. Not at all. Old English was way more like German, loaded with complicated grammar and endings. But then, after influences from French and Latin, the language went through this, well, you could call it a linguistic detox. It just shed all those complicated endings, and suddenly word order became king. It basically streamlined itself into a much cleaner system.
And this quote from Professor Mathias Nau, the mind behind this method, just illustrates the point perfectly. He says, English didn't just evolve, it organized itself. Think about that. It suggests the language didn't just randomly drift into its modern form, it actively organized itself into a logical, teachable system. It means there's a blueprint we can actually follow.
So the big question is, what is that blueprint? What's the master key that unlocks this whole organized system? Well, believe it or not, it's a simple three-part formula. And here it is, subject plus auxiliary verb plus main verb. That's it, S, V, A, V, P. The subject, S, that's just who or what is doing the action. The auxiliary verb, the VA, that's a helper verb. Words like do, be, or have. And the main verb, the VP, that's the action itself. This super simple structure is basically the engine inside almost every single sentence in modern English. Okay, and here's where this simple little formula becomes incredibly powerful. Just watch how it works. For a statement, you've got she has gone. Simple. Subject, auxiliary verb, main verb. Now, to make it negative, you don't need to learn some complicated new rule. You just pop the word not right after the auxiliary verb. She has not gone. And what about a question? Same deal. You just flip the subject and the auxiliary verb. Has she gone? See? One structure, three different functions, and absolutely zero new rules to memorize. It's beautiful, right?
Okay, so if that S plus VP structure is the engine, what's the fuel? What actually goes into that VP slot? Well, it turns out you only need a tiny little toolkit for the main verb part of our formula. In fact, you only need 5 verb forms, total.
Seriously, forget about trying to memorize those endless, scary-looking conjugation tables. You only need to know 5 forms of any verb. Just 5. That's the entire toolbox you'll ever need.
And here they are, the fantastic 5. First, you've got the base form, your basic verb, like go or eat. Second is the past form. Went, ate. Third is the past participle, so that would be gone or eaten. Then you have the third person singular, which is just the base form with an S on the end. Goes, eats. And finally, the present participle, which is just the base form with ing. Going, eating. That's it. Every single English verb tense you can think of is just built by combining an auxiliary verb with one of these 5 forms.
So what's the really crucial point here? It's the mental shift this creates. You stop trying to memorize dozens of abstract grammar rules, and you start seeing a simple, predictable structure.
And this slide really just says it all.
The old way of thinking has you asking, what tense is this? Present, perfect, continuous? It's a complicated label that doesn't actually help you build the sentence. But the new way? The new question is simply, what's the structure? What's the recipe? And the answer is simple. The auxiliary verbs are have plus been, and the main verb is the one plus ing form. See? It's a recipe, not a rule.
So, here's the big takeaway. Fluency doesn't come from memorizing a bunch of grammar labels from a textbook. It comes from recognizing patterns. It's about knowing where that auxiliary verb, the VA, goes. It's about knowing which of those 5 verb forms, the VP, you need to use. And once you know that, you automatically know how to form negatives and questions every single time. This isn't your old grammar class. It's all about structure.
And that leaves us with one final big thought to chew on. What if the hardest part of English, the thing that has frustrated learners for generations, what if it was never really that hard at all? What if it was just a simple, elegant pattern that we've all just been taught to see in the most complicated way possible?